Hey guys, we are going back into the Super7 Filmation line today of the new set of figures that they have recently released, and we're taking a look at, I guess, the second most controversial figure in this new line. We have got TRI-KLOPS here. So he comes with that normal slipcover, but you've seen it a bunch of times already, and he comes with the big, beautiful Castle Grayskull style window box. We've got a shot of him on the back in that classic Filmation style, standing in front of Snake Mountain, along with a bit of a bio as well. So let's do it. Let's take a look. Alright guys, here is our TRI-KLOPS figure out of the packaging, and if you guys follow this line with any regularity, you know that TRI-KLOPS is a bit of a controversial figure in that from the prototype stage to the production stage, there was a choice made to change his armor color from a darker green to this brighter green that you see here. Personally, it doesn't bother me. I'm not upset about it. I'm not going to complain about it. I'm just going to make the statement that it was done, the decision was made, and this is ultimately what we were given. For the folks out there that are upset about it, I'm not in your camp, but I'm also not against you either. It's very much an okay thing to be upset about because it's, again, a situation where we paid for something and then we got something else. So I understand the criticisms. I understand the complaints. It just doesn't bother me personally. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say on it. I like this bright green. I think it actually looks pretty cool. It pops against the darker color of the skin. I've got my old classics TRI-KLOPS with the dark green, and now I've got a different TRI-KLOPS with a different color. So ultimately, it's not a huge deal for me. The figure itself, I am pretty happy with overall. He does have, I do think I have one issue on my figure, and then there is one kind of pain point to talk about for this guy that I think a lot of folks, probably all folks, are going to experience, and I'll kind of discuss that. But we'll do articulation paint sculpt first, and then we'll talk about some of the weirdness with this guy. So the head can swivel, he can look up, he can look down, and one of the things that I think I might have an issue on mine that I can probably correct is this head does not really want to stay down. If I put it down, it just kind of pops back up. My PowerCon figures did the same thing, so I may, if I'm feeling you know, kind of lucky, pop that head off and mess around with how it sits on the ball peg. But after playing with my Hawk figure, I'm unsure if I really want to do that because I think I damaged her because her neck peg was so fragile. He should be a little more robust. The males are usually better than the females, but we'll see. So I do think that's kind of a problem. From the rest of the figure down, we're talking standard Motu Classics though, really. Arms can go out, around, bicep swivel, single jointed elbow. We've got a hinged and rotating wrist, ab crunch, and the armor will go with him, so that's good. Waist rotation, legs can go out. They can kick forward a bit, back a bit, thigh cut, single jointed knee, and then we've got a boot cut or shin swivel, whichever you prefer. And we've got a forward facing pin for hinge and rocker on the ankle. So it's like I said, it's Motu Classics Filmation. So if you've seen one, you've pretty much seen them all at this point. And standard stuff, not necessarily 100% modern articulation. It's definitely aged at this point. Now, as far as paint on TRI-KLOPS goes, very, very little. I mean, he's mostly an unpainted figure. The skin tones are all cast in that flesh tone plastic. We've got the molded red boots and furry loincloth. The belt is painted. The bracers are painted. The armor is cast in that plastic. We've got the helmet that's cast. These bands on his head are, those are painted. The hair is I believe the hair is molded plastic based on what I saw when I took him apart. And I'll talk about why in a minute. And then we've got white for those eyes. And then we do have some black and some slight brown in the pupil area of those eyes. So not tons, but at the same time, you know, you don't need to paint things that don't need paint on him. He is 70% naked, so I don't really fault them for not painting what isn't necessary. Otherwise, I think they got the look down pretty solid. I'm overall happy with his general aesthetic. I think he looks nice. Sculpt-wise, he's very basic as well. So he's basically just a standard buck with standard legs, slightly different boots than some of the other Filmation characters, and then it's just that armor piece that lays over top. And it's very similar to his previous Classics figure, just more in line with the Filmation aesthetic and slightly more simplistic, because that's kind of the goal here. The head sculpt is different from the Classics TRI-KLOPS as well. That thing is far more detailed than it ever really needs to be. This is very similar in his facial features, but the head is completely different. So the Classics TRI-KLOPS had basically a full head with a visor that sat over top. This is kind of a two-part system here. The head is one piece, and then, well, the the actual human head is one piece, and then the visor piece is another piece that actually sits over top of a big plastic nub. And it does rotate, and this is where I'm going to talk about the quote-unquote pain point that I experienced. And this seems to be a norm for pretty much everybody that's gotten a hold of this guy so far. So fresh out of the box, the visor did not spin. And it took some serious work to actually make it spin. Basically, I had to boil him in water over and over and over again, take a hairdryer to him, and I actually had to pry the skull cap off of the head in order to figure out what was wrong. Basically, what seems to be happening is that while they are applying paint and then putting him together, he's not dry, so the cap will be applied, paint will dry, and then it just sticks like glue is what it seems to be doing. There is a humongous peg in there. Basically, the peg is the entire size of this nub on the top. Maybe a little bigger, actually. But otherwise, once you have worked it out, and I mean, it really took some serious doing. I was digging in it with a box cutter, with a knife, to try to pry it apart, and then I ultimately was able to free it enough where I could pop the whole thing off. Once it comes off, it's going to be just fine once you then put it back on. So from there, you can spin it around. So we've got the three different eyes. You've got the square, the triangle, and the circle. So while I am very happy that they did include this feature, because honestly, I don't ever remember it being advertised. I think it was just always assumed that it would do this. But then it got into people's hands early, and no one could twist it. So it took some doing, and someone finally figured out that I should try to heat him up and see what actually happens, to where someone figured out that yes, it does spin, but it does take quite a bit of work to actually make it happen. Now, as far as accessories go for TRI-KLOPS here, we have got two. We've got this standard kind of generic Filmation blaster, which, I mean, it's very, very simplistic. It's just casting gray, but it's very much in keeping with the design elements and the aesthetic of the line. So I think it looks pretty good. I'm not sure I'm ever going to use it. I don't want to really have him in a situation where he's holding a sword and a gun. Something about that seems kind of weird to me sometimes. The big thing for me is his sword, which is honestly a little more detailed than I expected. It's fully metallic with silver and gold, and then the hilt is actually sculpted really nicely with a lot of design work on both sides. He can hold both weapons in either hand. He's got just two gripping hands. It's pretty standard stuff. But I dig what he's got. I'm definitely going to be displaying him with the sword for sure. I just don't know if I really needed that blaster, but I'm always up for an extra inclusion like that. And of course, since we've got two figures, it's only right to actually do a comparison between the last TRI-KLOPS that we got in the Classics line against the new. And I've said before that I really, really love the Classics TRI-KLOPS. It is among my favorite figures in the whole line. I think it captures everything about the character perfectly and then kind of modernizes it. But this is a TRI-KLOPS that I remember from my childhood, the one that was in the cartoon. So I have a real soft spot for this, just like with pretty much all of the Filmation figures, because they go back to what was always my He-Man, which was always the cartoon. Because I was so young when it came out, the cartoon was always my frame of reference. So I really, really dig this figure, even with its kind of couple weird little faults that I think it has. It's overall very nice. They are just two different aesthetics for one character that I'm overall a very big fan of. So one is not really better than another for me because they're so wildly different. This is a great figure for what it represents, and I think this is a great figure for what it represents. So overall, I am ultimately very happy with TRI-KLOPS. I do think that my head does have some sort of issue with the neck peg, which I can figure out. It's not a huge thing for me. It's not a deal breaker. It's just something to note. You know, your mileage may vary. The issue with getting that visor to spin was definitely more of a pain than it needed to be. But ultimately, it is fixable, and it's something that you can take care of in 5 to 10 minutes. It's just like one of those things that really we shouldn't have had to do it, so it is worth noting. And overall, I'm not upset. Like I said, I'm not upset about the armor color change. I can live with it. I think it looks fine. It's not nearly as bright in person as a lot of those pictures originally that kind of sent off all the red flags when everybody kind of went crazy when we saw that it was changed. It is definitely different, but it's not so different that it upsets me. So overall, I think he's a cool figure. He's a great character, and this is, you know, pretty much true Filmation style, which is what I'm all about. So that's going to do it for this look at the Masters of the Universe Filmation TRI-KLOPS figure from Super7. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know where you stand on this whole armor issue. And until next time, guys.